Hello and welcome everyone to this evening's Midnight Overwatch. I am your host, Phoenix, and I am joined this evening at the Overwatch by Bob Gilpatrick of Boomers Forever Young. And Bob is a health expert. He'll tell you all about his talents and what he has done and who he exactly is if you've never heard Bob before, don't know Bob. And we're going to be discussing on this Overwatch health aspects. This is a health report on the Midnight Overwatch, and we're going to be discussing the new spectrum of healing technologies. Now, briefly, if you're the first time you've met here, what is Midnight Overwatch? It's a place where we can come together once a week on the weekend and basically stop, take a rest, look back, see where the path has been, what we have encountered recently, looking forward, what will the path possibly bring us across, and a place to rest and talk, communicate, and meet new friends. And that's where we're at right now on the Midnight Overwatch. With that being said, let's bring in our guest, Bob Gilpatrick of Boomers Forever Young. Bob, how are you and how are things going, man?
I'm doing really well, thank you, Phoenix. And everything is going well. We're here in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's the rainy season, and we just dodged the first hurricane, which is making its way out to the northwest. Praise God. And we're here in Florida doing really well.
Oh, yeah. And while Bob was saying that, I remember to myself that I should give you the date of this, everyone. It is August 23rd, 2025, when you're listening to this episode of the Overwatch. Bob, I told everyone you are, and again, a lot of people listening right now know who you are very well. They've communicated with you and are patrons of your company. Why don't you introduce yourself and basically give a background of exactly who is Bob Gilpatrick and what you're doing now, please?
Thank you, Phoenix. Well, just kind of starting with the present moment, I'm the president and co-founder of the Boomers Forever Young nutrition company. It's a nutrition company and a little more, in that we also help people with stress management and traumas and other things like that. And I've been doing this since 2011, so we just passed 14 years. With this particular company, we've helped over 10,000 people with our products and our videos and our counsel. And I started this particular company when I moved to Florida. And when I moved to Florida, I was kind of retiring from what I was doing in New York, which I owned a business brokerage firm in New York. And I was also a holistic health therapist. I'd been studying my whole life. So I came to Florida for the next part of my life. And so the month I turned 50, I decided to come to Florida. That was 2006.
Very good. And right now?
And a couple of years with a computer project. And he had a real estate enterprise, and he needed help with a computer project to help manage his beachfront vacation rentals. And I was really great with search engine optimization and the like. And I met him. His name's Larry, and he was pretty sick when I met him. He was 65, and he was going on 85 in terms of his physical health. And I just asked him if he'd like me to help him with his health as well as his business. And he said yes. So I started doing that using my knowledge of nutrition and stress management. And very quickly, he started to improve. Just in the first 2 weeks, he ended up losing 12 pounds of fat. He started to gain strength working out at the gym. And eventually, over the next couple of months, we were able to get him off all 11 of his medications and canceled 2 different surgeries he was scheduled for. And he de-aged dramatically. And Larry said to me at that point, Bob, instead of just helping one person at a time like you do now, why don't we think about starting a company where we can help lots of people, thousands of people? So I agreed to do that. And that's how we created the Boomers Forever Young nutrition company. And prior to that, Phoenix, I worked in New York most of my life. Prior to that, I spent some time in other countries, including in Israel and including in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, and in Russia. And each time what I was doing related in some way to health and education. And for quite a while, after going through graduate school, I worked 20 plus years in the elder care business, where I was a licensed administrator to be able to run nursing homes in the state of New York and New Jersey. And I went into that business because of my background in social work and education, and I saw how people who were elderly in the society were being devalued and were being treated very poorly. And I wanted to see if I could do something to make improvements for people. So as I started working in the nursing home business, I followed along with some of the most progressive people that were in that business that were doing good things. And I copied some of what they were doing, created some of own new things on my own, and was successful in being able to elevate the quality of care and the quality of life for nursing home patients during that time. And I also created alternatives to the nursing home by forming home health agencies that would use all the resources of the nursing home minus the shelter to help people stay in their own homes instead of having to go into the nursing home. And at a given point, we were caring for as many people at home, about 500 people a day, as we were in the 450 bed nursing home. And I learned all along the way alternative types of therapies. I studied neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis. I studied the healing codes. I studied the emotional freedom technique, studied the techniques of Byron Katie, and on and on and on. And went to manual therapy schools to learn to do craniosacral therapy and lymph therapy, et cetera, et cetera. And in addition, some of the more spiritual and esoteric therapies that were all the way up to and including the capability to deal with very severe, very extreme energies that were causing people health problems, and in some cases had rendered them terminally ill. And continued all throughout my life studying one new modality after another as really brilliant new people came onto the scene with their discoveries. And sometimes these discoveries had been sequestered for decades and then released. And so I would participate in learning those techniques and then employing them for the benefit of helping people to heal. And so I did that as well as worked in the business world, where I owned a brokerage firm that helped people buy and sell businesses and start up new businesses. I helped a lot of inventors that were in the field of health and wellness. I helped a lot of companies and people in Russia to modify their healthcare system there. And I help people in the field of energetics all the way to working with people that created the first hydrogen fuel cells and other technologies like that. I used my business acumen and other capabilities to help pioneer some of those inventions. And And right now, coming, back to the current day, people will often ask me, well, how did you first get interested in this? And I tell them, well, I remember the first time someone called me for help with something was when I was 11 years old. And the phone, which was one of those, wall mounted dial phones, um, rang, and it was a child from elementary school who was having a difficult relationship issue. And somehow somebody told her to call me for advice on what to do. And I was a little surprised that it happened, but I just kind of naturally fell into empathizing and encouraging and reassuring this person and letting them know that it would all work itself out. I wasn't really a skilled therapist at the time. But then also in terms of the nutrition field, my dad was a professor of plant science at Cornell University, and I grew up around that environment, and I worked there for many years as an assistant and a laborer, and I got to see how the science of health and wellness from the standpoint of agriculture was conducted. And there are many, many high level PhD scientists there, including my father. And I just naturally had an interest in things like healthful herbs and wild edibles that were healthy. And my mom and my sister were experts in that. And so it just was kind of a morphic field of healthiness and healing that I grew up in. And coming back to right now, today, here we are in 2025, close to the end, and I have seen one invention after another, and one form of therapy after another evolve and be perfected. And I've been fortunate to meet some of these creators and study with them. And so we have now this enormous range of therapeutic techniques that go all the way from basic nutrition, all the way out to faith healings and channelings and astrology and numerology, all types of electronic and electromagnetic and light therapies that are now being perfected as we speak. And the newest being epigenetic reprogramming, the holy grail of immortality, is now coming to fruition. And I'm involved with the scientist who is the first in that field. He's the pioneer in that field and created the first ever epigenetic reprogramming nutraceutical that literally changes the way your genes express themselves. And so I'm fortunate to still be very young. I'm not yet 70, not until next August. And I'm here and witnessing these amazing new developments, and with many, many more to come that are going to, in our lifetime, should we live another 5, 10, 20 years, are going to see, I believe, the complete evolution and conclusion to the puzzles of physical immortality.
Wow, that's quite a statement. And Bob, you have quite a resume there. And I'll tell everyone, I've known Bob for many years. We've done many interviews over the years on different platforms, etc. And that's just the tip of the iceberg right there, everybody. He's being humble in some things. And an interesting thing I was saying about Bob, like I said, we're going to be covering a lot of topics here in the future. And you were talking about all the different individuals you have met and you have worked with and all these things you have learned. There's an interesting individual that very few people have ever met that you knew very well and helped him. And he was a general in the United States military. You want to tell everybody who this general was and what this general was doing?
Well, yeah. So I was the administrator of a nursing home back in the 1990s. And I got a report from my nursing director that a couple of our patients were doing really well after in recovering from a stroke. And they were taking these two patients to an outpatient clinic down the street, and they were receiving a technology called neurobiofeedback, which I had never heard of before. And so I said to myself and to my assistant CEO, who was a healer himself, hey, why don't we go meet this doctor and see what she's up to? So it was right down the street. We went down and we walked into her office, and she's sitting there behind her desk, and in a side chair was a gentleman. And they introduced themselves as Bert and Rima. And we started talking about who we were, what we did. And my colleague introduced himself. They asked him what he did, and he mentioned NLP is one of the things that he taught at this international center. And the gentleman sitting there said, oh, I know about NLP. I brought NLP to the Army.
Yeah, tell everyone what NLP is quickly.
Neuro-linguistic programming. It's a therapeutic talk technique for therapeutics.
Thank you.
And so we knew right away, we both looked at each other, and we looked at him, and we said, you're the old Army general in the Anthony Robbins tapes. So Anthony Robbins had just begun to pioneer the use of infomercials and cassette tapes that people could purchase to learn about various things. And one of the topics he taught was how to be a good negotiator. And he used stories about when he would negotiate with the Army for some of his services, like helping with the sharpshooters and other things. And whenever he negotiated his pay for his contract, he negotiated with this old Army general. And he talked about how smart the guy was, how tough he was, how hard it was to negotiate his side of the deal, because the old Army general was equal in his negotiating skills. And then he would tell a story about how he'd used NLP and hypnotic languaging. And it turns out that this old Army general was General Stubblebine, Albert Stubblebine III. And then people who watch YouTube interviews with people like Sean Ryan, who's one of the top podcasters in the world, he interviews a lot of people that talk about remote viewing. And General Stubblebine was involved in the whole project that the military intelligence was doing for remote viewing. And his name is mentioned quite often in these interviews with Sean. And he was the Army side of the intelligence. He was the director of Army intelligence, and he coordinated and worked with these psychics that pioneered remote viewing. And so we knew all about that from the Monroe Institute of Applied Technology, which General Stubblebine was a consultant to and a flyer. So
yeah, that's the Gateway Project, everyone.
Yep. And he was one of the flyers in the Gateway Project, and also a pioneer in the field of remote viewing. And so we got to know them over time. We learned a lot about neurobiofeedback. They had an amazing institute that I got to spend lots of time at, and sharing all kinds of information, healing techniques. They were the first clinic to own a light beam generator, which we'll go into someday. And they had all kinds of patients coming to them from around the world for healing. including some very famous athletes that were healed at that center. And I got to spend quite a bit of amazing time with them, both there and at their house and other places, and learned quite a great deal about energy. General Stubblebine was famous for being able to bend metal with his mind, and he was very, very compassionate, very powerful healer.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the privilege of meeting him and introducing him to many other people that were in my sphere of healers, and introduced numerous different healers to him and his wife. And I won't go into the story about what happened after 9/11. Probably not good time for that, but that was the type of thing that used to happen to me as I worked in this field of healing.
Very cool. You know, again, that came to my mind when you were talking about all the people you had met, and General Stubblebine. Everyone, like Bob described, he was Gateway Project, Monroe Institute, et cetera, et cetera. There was a movie, a Hollywood movie called Men Who Stare at Goats. Have you ever watched that movie? The senior officer and all that, in charge of all that was portrayed was General Stubblebine. And like I said before, the things that Bob has shared with you, tip of the iceberg. So we won't go into it because it's maybe someday Bob will tell you, but Bob saved General Stubblebine's life. And I'm just going to leave that right there. So anyway, I don't want to put you on the spot, Bob, but what we're talking about here, everyone, and all these varied and different topics, of course, Bob owns his health company. We'll talk a little bit later about here. But the title of this, the new spectrum of healing technologies. And what we're going to do is Bob is going to introduce, in our remaining time here, a list of different new technologies that he wants to share with us, talk about. And again, these aren't things he's trying to sell you. He's going to educate us, and possibly we'll be able to give some links where you could find this type of technology and help in your area. Totally unaffiliated, by the way. But that's the direction we want to go with this spectrum of new healing technologies. And what we'll do is Bob's going to describe different ones, like I said, today in the remaining program. And as we have Bob on every couple of weeks in the future on Midnight Overwatch, he's going to cover each one of those topics, maybe in whatever order. And maybe we'll even get to the point where we can get some questions from you guys. And if you have different questions, Bob may do a Q&A with us all on the air, and that'd be really cool where we could do that. So a lot of possibilities of what we can do. So Bob, you have anything else you want to share with us before we go into basically what you'd like to share with us over the coming weeks?
Well, I would just say this, Phoenix, I'm really looking forward to the communication here through this vehicle, because I have to tell you, in the 14 years I've had the Boomers Forever Young company, I've learned a lot of new things from people that listen to broadcasts, and they will, in a Q&A, will ask, have you heard of this? Or, have you heard about this combined with this? And I've learned a lot of great new things and researched and explored from information from the interaction with the people that are listening to the shows. Mm-hmm. And I see it as a great opportunity, because I know the type of people that are listening to your shows and what they're paying attention to. And I'm sure very quickly I'm going to learn some really awesome new stuff from being on with you. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, yeah. I tell you what, that is so true. The listeners, and I'm kind of like quietly famous for this. I'm not really famous for anything, but Bob will tell you, and I've had other guests on that they're pretty astounded at over the years the, how do I say this, caliber of listeners who listen to right now Midnight Overwatch and past platforms, really intelligent, open-minded people of critical thought. And I've learned so much myself and met very, very interesting and educated and just sometimes it blows my mind. People who send an email, Bob, I'm like, yeah, I listened to you and blah 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 blah. And I'm this and this. I'll be like, oh wow, okay, that's humbling. But anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Also, Bob, let's see where we at here. Getting close to the bottom of the hour here, so I'm going to give you the floor, sir.
Yeah. I just say, finish thinking back. I've had numerous people that have listened to the shows that you and I have done that have come to visit me in St. Petersburg. And one in particular, I certainly can't use his name, but um, very highly evolved spirit form, and had driven from quite a ways away to come and see me with a very specific, dangerous health issue that had been perpetrated upon him, and he had come to me for assistance. And praise God, we were able to mitigate the 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 intervention that had been perpetrated upon him in a number of different vibrational octaves, and he's doing very well today. And once every couple of years, he stays in touch, and other people, very well-known musician who stops by from time to time to visit with us, that came about from these very interactions that we've had.
That's interesting. Let me translate that for everybody, what Bob just said. Okay, the dude drove to him to get help because somebody put a spell on him. And Bob and his team, they worked with the gentleman and did what they did, and the spell was broken. That's what he just said in plain English. Am I correct on that, Bob, or you want to correct?
Well, not only that, but this spell was manifesting as a very visible physical problem, which happens quite often, Phoenix, when people are bothered by vibrational entities. It manifests in life-threatening illness as a result. And so in order to be able to have the person's soul continue in physical form here on earth, something has to be done about that. So that's part of what I do.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, so let's progress here. Why don't you get right into what you have in mind?
Yeah, so there's many kind of layers of information and vibration that make up human beings, and our ability to have our form be in a healthy status so that it doesn't give up on us and die, and we might have to transition earlier than we would have wanted to. There's a lot that has to be understood, what's causative, what's a symptom, all like that. And if you start to look at the physical body that we can see, the flesh and bones, right, and the blood and circulation and all like that, is all a very elaborate scheme that God has come up with to give us a vehicle that we can walk around in. And inside of all that we can see is a nervous system. It's a brain and a spinal cord and all these offshoots from the spinal cord that are transmitting electricity and creating the opportunity for consciousness. And other parts of our body are involved in this consciousness, including our heart muscle has about 40,000 neurons in the upper right ventricle of the heart that's communicating with the brain neuronally as well as vibrationally. And you also have nerves that are in your gut. And a lot is happening in your gut with the bacteria there. And so here we find ourselves on planet Earth with these enormously elaborate bodies with 70 trillion cells and about 10 times that many other than human cells, that is kind of in a symbiotic relationship with our human cells and giving rise to our ability to think, observe, have spiritual experiences, and also move around and have, ambulation and hands that we can manipulate things with, and have, in what one would hope is a very enjoyable, even awe-inspiring experience of having a spark of consciousness, given a full awareness and ability to walk around on a blue rock out in space, right? And so to begin to understand how it is that we're going to use the spectrum of modalities to help keep our body very strong and very healthy, and very capable, which then helps to give rise to having a very strong and healthy sense of ourself, of our soul, of our connection to our source in a way that is easy to do because we're not being dragged down by being sick, right? And so if you look at the elemental part of us, where you can notice that we have these human cells, you can just look at yourself and see that you have skin, which is made up of cells. And there are numerous different elaborate metabolic pathways and mechanisms inside that each cell. And you have the entire code for human life is in every one of those cells in the form of our DNA. And that DNA is incredibly complex and capable. It's a DNA that is set, but it's not determinative. It only determines who we are and how we feel and how our body is when that DNA is allowed to be expressed. So it's like a child who's might be 8 years old, who's sitting in the back of class and is very shy. And maybe the other children and the teacher think this child's not very smart because he doesn't really speak. Yet sitting inside of this child is this incredible intelligence. And if the child is nurtured and encouraged and comforted and allowed to express himself, all of a sudden his magnificence begins to come forward. And that happened with Anthony Robbins. He was such a child that was about to be held back in school until one particular teacher helped him to express and evolve. It's the same with our DNA. Our DNA needs to give the ability to express itself so its partner, RNA, can come and make a copy of it and go out into the cell and allow for the creation of human life from that God-given code. And so there's a lot that can happen with all different types of healing modalities that will alter that genetic expression, which will alter your life. And we now know that everything from taking a pill that contains extracts from plants all the way to various types of electromagnetic energy, whether it's in the form of a pulse that we cannot see, or if it's in a pulse that we can see, different forms of light that we can actually perceive. And so where do you start when you think about the healing modalities? And a lot of it comes very simply from kind of typical medicine and alternative medicine and nutrition. And we can look at how people are healthy or not, and we can relate it to what they do and what they eat. And so, for example, one therapeutic modality is exercise. And exercise, even if all you do is jog a little bit and lift some weights, has a tremendous positive benefit on your physical health. But you can take physical exercise all the way to things like yoga, Kriya yoga, using Tai Chi, etc., that where this exercise also lends an element of spirituality and a an expansion of your consciousness and your happiness, even though when you look at people, you'd say, oh, they're doing some exercises. Well, there's actually a lot more to it than that. In that simple part of your life of exercise can become very esoteric in terms of what type you're doing and what you're focusing on. And of course, the other thing that goes along with your health is your diet. Are you consuming foods that are non-toxic? Are you consuming foods that are not too sugary or too processed, that have undigestible seed oils in them? And it's obviously incredibly important when you look at the fact that in the United States, half the people in the country are overweight, and a good portion of them are obese, and it's causing a massive, massive health crisis in the United States. And you have now, for example, the new, Health and Human Services Secretary, RFK Jr., is looking to tackle this problem and look at what can be done with the levers of the government to help make the society healthier. Because right now, the whole reason we have programs like this on health and wellness is because so many people are not healthy. Half the population needs a lot of help. Also, have to look at the whole aspect of how a human body ages over time. And people age by 100 years old, they're pretty much fried, right? Because your body is like a log that's burning in the fire. And over time, that log burns up and all that's left is smoke and ash. Human bodies are like that too. We're aerobic life, and we are burning ourselves up over time with oxidation. And human bodies need oxygen to survive, but it is also the same process that over time burns us out, just like that log in the fire. However, we now know from modern science that your rate of burn is dependent on how many antioxidants your body has available at any given time, because the same oxidation that's burning you up can be neutralized now with modern science. And so you can slow your rate of aging from oxidation dramatically with the use of compounds like SOD, TMG, proanthocyanins, certain vitamins and minerals we can take by mouth or even IV, glutathione, in order to slow our rate of burn. And we can also pay very close attention now to that microbiome we talked about earlier. It's one thing to care for your 70 million human cells, but you also have to care for the 700 million cells that are bacteria, viruses, funguses, parasites. And we have to make sure that none of that gets out of balance, because if it does, you could be dead very, very quickly if that microbiome gets out of balance. So we now have numerous different types of tests to ascertain the veracity of your microbiome, everything from what's happening on the surface of your skin to everything that's happening in your large intestine, where there's over 100 different kinds of bacteria in your intestine in all varying ranges of amounts and balance, from good types of bacteria to bad types of bacteria. And they're all working tirelessly, interfacing with the food that you eat and other cells in your body's nerve cells, and helping to create compounds that create your consciousness. So without the bacteria that's in your gut, you'd have no human consciousness. You would not be walking around saying, wow, isn't this a beautiful planet? And aren't I so grateful to have these friends and this nice place to live, etc. Without those bacteria, you would not have neurotransmission. You would not be aware in this sense of awareness.
That's amazing. I've never thought about that. It's it's such a beautiful, uh, divine, complex thing that we have. It's a great gift, you know, and taking care of our health. I used to tell my guys all the time, take care of your equipment will take care of you, right? And what was the first piece of equipment we were all given when we entered this world? Our bodies. So anyway, a lot to it. Anyway, I
Yeah,
didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah,
Please continue, Bob. Fascinating
yeah,
stuff.
and it's very interesting, you know, when you enter the world, for the most part, inside the womb, you're kind of isolated and you don't have much of a microbiome. But upon birth, coming out through the birth canal, your body gets inoculated with the bacteria that's in the birth canal. And so by the time you're born, assuming you weren't born by a C-section, okay, your body has transformed because already the bacteria in the birth canal has gotten into your mouth, into your eyes, onto your skin. And when you're born, you already are in the process of being inoculated by an army of bacteria. And as soon as you start drinking mother's milk, there's a lot of bacteria in that too, which is beneficial. The bacteria that got into your mouth in the birth canal is actually digesting your first meal for you. And so, literally, the process of being birthed introduces you to the macrocosm of life that allows you to have this symbiotic relationship. And by the time you're just a few months old, your body's totally inoculated by bacterial colonies, colony forming units. And at that point, you're actually 9/10 bacteria and only about 1/10 human. And so to have the capability now with modern science to pay attention to that microbiome and tweak it with creative new types of probiotics, even things like fecal transplants for people that are very sick, where they have an overgrowth of a bad bacteria in their gut. They can actually exchange their microbiome with a different person who is healthy. And in many cases, it saves people's lives. Little children that are born with spina bifida need such fecal transplants on a regular basis just to stay alive. They're highly, highly susceptible to a bacteria called C. diff, and their immune system doesn't have the ability to counteract it based on their birth defect. So they give these children continuous fecal transplants to save their life. And we now found by accident, close to 10 years ago now, that when humans have too much C. diff and they give them a fecal transplant, it also helps with other diseases like multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease. And it gave rise to a whole new healing modality for autoimmune diseases, which look like might have been precipitated in some cases by an imbalance in that microbiome. And so one of the healing modalities is to understand the entirety of the complexity of this system, this human and other than human system that's working together, and to be able to deploy technologies that will help to balance it and enhance it and make it generative instead of destructive.
Now, what are some of these technologies? You know, we've been talking about this, and you touched upon a couple of them. But what technologies are out there right now? And you could like go down through the ones that have caught your eye, you think are interested, think have a lot of possibility, and possibly things we haven't even heard of before. So, what exactly, when you're talking about the new technologies, or do you have in mind?
Yeah. So there's quite a few, and just starting at that elemental level of the biology, the whole field of health and wellness and anti-aging is now $1 trillion a year industry. So there's a lot, and one of the things is just to be able to have products that have enough antioxidants in them to slow your rate of aging. So there are numerous trade secrets and patents that are in place that have been able to stabilize these antioxidants so people can actually take them by mouth. There's also super technologies for helping with your circulation, because it's good to have good nutrition and oxygen coming in to your lungs, but you have to be able to circulate it in your blood. So there's the whole discovery of arginine and citrulline that allows for better expansion of your blood vessels. And there's also knowledge about how your nerves create that blood flow as well. And there's knowledge about how to keep your nerves healthy with oxygen and also great nutrition. So nutrition is subject to the new technologies where there are brand new techniques of microizing nutrition to make it highly absorbable, and new techniques for changing the solubility of certain molecules to make them more absorbable so that it actually gets into the middle of the cell, to the nucleus, and actually can activate the DNA. So this is what's called epigenetic reprogramming. And this is what all the top science institutes in the world are studying in order to bring about their goal, which is to achieve the immortality of the human body. You also have all kinds of new stem cell technologies. So a human being regenerates itself in part by producing adult stem cells. And these stem cells are in your bone marrow. They're created and released into your bloodstream, and they migrate to the different parts of your body, and they become brand new cells. And there are techniques for stimulating that so that you can make more of these stem cells. And there are literally pills you can take that will stimulate your body to make more stem cells. There's also new technology, believe it or not, to stimulate cellular death. And this is a big part of health, people's health, is as cells get old, they are programmed to die off and get out of the way, move out of your body, and allow for a new cell to take its place. But as you age, many cells are not getting the signal to die off, and they're basically infecting your whole body, almost like a bacterial infection is infecting it. And now we have new technologies to force those cells to actually die off. And combinations of nutrients have been discovered that can do that. And people can put together, resveratrol and quercetin together in a mix, and it will stimulate these cells to get out of the way. There's also lots of new stuff for helping with the health of people's hearts. So in the world of health and wellness, heart attacks are still the leading cause of death worldwide, and especially in the United States. And we now know what it takes to keep your heart healthy. We know how to keep your mitochondria healthy, which is the main reason why people end up with heart disease. Their mitochondria stop functioning properly. We know every nutrient that's needed for the Krebs cycle. And we have products in powder form that people can take that were scientifically formulated to make sure that the cells of their heart are functioning at a very high rate. It's also discovery of enzymes, nattokinase, serrapeptase, that help to cleanse out your arteries in your heart and other places in your body. Also, we now know of all types of vibrational interventions that are helpful. So you can look at the whole spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum, starting at one end with sound waves all the way to gamma waves on the other side, and all in between. The human body responds to these waves, these unseen for the most part waves. We can only see a tiny bit of the red light spectrum, of the broader spectrum, and we can't see sound waves, for example, yet sound waves have profound healing capacity And I remember meeting a doctor uh, from France about 25 years ago who had a technology. You'll like this, Phoenix. He took these pipes from old pipe organs from churches, and he arranged them in a big circle, and he would have a person who had cancer go into the middle of the circle, and he would have a person with a hammer that would go all around and bang each one of these pipes. And it created a vibration that would implode the cancer cells, but would not hurt the rest of the human cells.
Get out of here. That's great. I have never heard that story before.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I met the guy in New York. He had come over from France to do a series of lectures, and I got to have dinner with him one night with some friends, and he showed us all the slides of what the tumors looked like before and after these treatments. And many other forms of sound therapy are available, and people can use sound therapy for the health of their emotions and the health of their spiritual life. And they're very simple technologies that were used at the Monroe Institute that they called hemisync, hemispheric synchronization. And it turns out if you put a tone in one ear and a different tone in the other ear, and in this case, they would use headphones and put 400 cycles in one ear and maybe 410 in the other ear, and your brain would do a subtraction problem between the two tones and vibrate at the difference between the tones. So as you tweaked the tones, you could tweak the vibration of your brain from gamma all the way down into delta, which is your wave of sleep. And they use these tones to create a sense of no mind and also a vibrational capacity to elevate from your mind. And these were used to stimulate out-of-body experiences and other types of ethereal, esoteric experiences. And you can simply go online and buy such technology today. You don't have to go to the Monroe Institute. And in a more extreme example, I bought one of these one time for a nursing home where I worked. It was called a Cimatron chair. So a Cimatron chair was this beautiful leather-bound easy chair that relaxed back, and it was mounted on a motorized pedestal. And you could turn on the power, and this easy chair would gyrate very slowly in a circle on this pedestal, and there were speakers laden inside the leather of the chair. And it was a modified sound table, which was used for therapy by a psychiatrist in the Bronx, created the first sound table. And I actually got to see it because a sound therapist here in St. Pete had it in her office, the original one. It was literally right across the street from my office. And I used to go there with people to get sound therapy treatments. And the Cimatron chair had the speakers in the chair, and it was hooked up to a separate source for sound. Back in that day when they first came out, they would put them into these old style, cassette tape players. This was before even CDs. And they would play a harmonic resonance through the headset that would create these binaural beats that would help people change their brainwaves. And at the same time, that gyrating motion was the most extreme form of relaxation. And the reason we had it was to help people with Alzheimer's disease who were highly agitated, and in the absence of such a technology would have to be heavily medicated so they wouldn't be violent toward the other patients. And this was the first time ever a Cimatron chair had been deployed in a nursing home to take the place of extreme barbiturate type medications for sedating people.
Yeah.
They were chemical restraints. And in this case, we used motion vibration and sound vibration to accomplish an even better result. And so this is one of the types of therapies available, but not only that, think about the whole spectrum of the light therapies, from blue light therapies to yellow light, the whole broad spectrum of the red light, the near infrared, the red, the far infrared can be used for anything from detoxification in red light saunas to healing all different types of physical difficulties, depending on the power of the red light pulse and depending on the actual frequency, because different organs, different microorganisms respond to different frequencies. And so, for example, Hulda Clark many years ago came out with a vibrational therapy that you could hold on to these little copper poles that was hooked up to a power supply, and it was coded to implode parasites. So people would use this for parasite cleanses. And I've had a number of different clients of mine whose life was saved by this technology and would use it on an every other day basis to keep populations of nasty microorganisms down that were literally killing them. And the antibiotics, anti-parasitic drugs that were available were not dealing with it, were not taking care of it. Yet this vibrational device, I've got one right here at my desk, it, for $200 served a very, very powerful purpose.
Amazing. We're getting close to the end of the hour here, Bob. All kinds of technologies. The light technologies I'm really fascinated in. I know there's some radionics that you're going to cover and different things. I'm a big fan of red light healing, LED. It was I first heard about it in the United States military, and it is used in places in some of the clinics for rehabilitation from broken bones, gunshot wounds, things like that, bad abrasions and cuts. And it has been proven, scientifically proven and adopted. I mean, just that technology alone could, instead of just a standard broken arm treatment with a cast, implementing the red light healing techniques. Also, they have found that sometimes broken bones heal twice as fast, which is a lot, and other things. And I know there's all kinds of other technologies.
Yep.
And we have like 3 minutes rolling out here, and we're going to cover a lot of those in the future. Yep. As you come back on, maybe we will, like I said, tackle one of these at a time, and maybe get to the point we'll do some Q&A. We'll take some questions from the audience. And I think it's going to be really good. But since we are running out of time here, I want to tell everyone, you look in the description box below, you'll find a link. If you want more information about Bob, what Bob offers, his healthcare company, amazing. And in the future, I'm sure he'll tell us much more about that, and even his contact info. And Bob, you can share all that right now with us. And also, as we roll out of here on Midnight Overwatch this weekend, why don't you give your number one contact info and your final thoughts and some words of wisdom before we roll out of here, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Phoenix. So if people want to give us a call, we have an 800 number, which is 861-4609. We answer the phones Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 Eastern time. We're at 5401 Central Avenue in St. Petersburg, Florida. If you want to come by, you make sure that you call ahead of time, and I'll be sure that I'm there to meet up with you. And just in closing, Phoenix, I'll just say there's many, many other types of healing technologies. Everything from people using information from near-death experiences, outer-body experiences, lucid dreaming, channeling of healers from different planets, from different star systems, and all of the different religious types of healings as well. People receiving hands-on healings, energetic healings, everything to singing bowls and special potions